Does this sound like you? You try to be productive, get as much done, but you're only met with another list of things to do. Your to-do list never seems to run out, whether it's for work or for personal projects, and soon enough you become overwhelmed, or worse yet, burned out from a never-ending list of stuff. Well, welcome to the modern era where there's always, if not too much to do. And so we never end up doing what really matters, and in fact try to feel like we're being productive by remaining busy with menial tasks. Well, maybe it's time to constrain yourself a bit tighter, to keep yourself fixed into a set time limit that prevents you from embracing and accepting everything. And that's exactly what I'll talk about in this video, the fixed schedule productivity method. But before I jump into it, make sure to like this video so it can be shared to more people, and subscribe to this channel so I can continue to help you mind the golden mind. So coined by the popular productivity expert and author Cal Newport in his book Deep Work, he mentions that the fixed schedule productivity approach to work is a way to intentionally manage your workload and schedule it in a way that allows you to accomplish the things you need, all with a given period. We all want to do a lot, but it can be tough if we're juggling a 9-to-5 job along with maintaining our health and then trying to do something out of our own side hustles, which 39% of Gen Zs now have. So with all the things that are coming at us, how do we realistically get everything done in a set period of time, all the while without getting burnt out? Well, according to Newport, the fixed schedule productivity method is all about taking 2 simple actionables to your work. Number 1, construct a set schedule of work hours that provides a balance of effort and relaxation. And number 2, do not violate the schedule. It's really that simple. Sure, the first step may seem doable, but what many people end up failing at is the second point. Especially in this digital age, it's easy to get all these incoming notifications from social media work and others, and just get distracted from doing actual deep work that we should be doing. For example, let's say you're sitting down to create an optimized, actionable marketing strategy for the next 2 months, but in between, you get messages from different colleagues that they need you to do A, B, and C. Of course, a natural response may be to get to those smaller tasks and get them out of the way, so you go about responding, doing them, and bam. You feel like you've done a lot, and by the end of the day, you haven't actually finished that marketing strategy. Well, that's exactly what the idea behind fixed schedule productivity is all about. Constrain yourself to a fixed schedule that's dedicated to a specific work and task, and only doing that. As Newport states in his book, fixed schedule productivity is a high-level commitment that induces many low-level specific changes. So remember, the idea behind the fixed schedule productivity method is to set specific constraints. The goal is not to get burnt out or waste any time on menial matters that really don't move the needle. It's all about giving yourself room to breathe while getting yourself sufficient amount of time to really execute. Whether it's broad constraints like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. or narrow constraints like 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., break down your time, dedicate a given constraint period, and stick to those constraints. This is what can ultimately prevent you from bouncing all over the place during a given workday. And besides that, some additional benefits to this include the ability to eliminate wasteful activity. Yes, it's easy to fill your time with low-impact tasks and waste time. When you set a boundary of what you're meant to do during that fixed schedule, you end up having to really keep yourself focused to that given goal, custom fitting your work to fill that constraint. You can really observe how long you really need for that and what works and what doesn't. In other words, your brain is only paying attention to one key thing instead of keeping itself open to the periphery of other stimulus. And then another benefit to this is that it prevents cognitive information overload. We live in an age where burnout is real. The reason for this is plenty. But in a digital age where digital distractions are abundant, we might feel like we're doing quite a lot, but in truth, our brains end up feeling cognitively exhausted from the constant switching and absorption of information, aka information overload. Remember, doing a lot of work isn't doing quality work. We talk about the misconception of multitasking in another video, which you can check out later. And then another benefit is being realistic and sustainable. When you constrain yourself to doing one thing right for a given period of time without stepping over those boundaries, you force yourself to be realistic. The fixed schedule forces you to conserve your cognitive energy throughout the day. And when you have a fixed schedule for when you're allowed to do a specific type of work, then you prevent yourself from adding more and more to the list for the sake of feeling like you're doing a lot. And this in turn forces you to say no to the things that may really matter and add to the productivity of your work, ultimately allowing your work to remain more sustainable long term. And then finally, another benefit is that it allows you to be more creative. There's a big misconception that believes constraining yourself prohibits creativity, as you see creativity as some vast, flexible cloud that you pull from. But on the contrary, there's research taking 145 empirical studies on the effects of constraints on individuals, teams, and organizations. Opposite to common belief, when you don't have any constraints, you actually stifle the creative process as people become more complacent and are more likely to go with the path of least resistance. Since there are technically no limits, you end up going for any idea that really comes to mind instead of trying to come up with something different within that given constraint. Constraints, in fact, challenge you to search and connect the dots in different ways. The study mentioned earlier suggests that constraints only stifle creativity when they are too extreme and high. So, if you really want to actually implement the fixed schedule productivity approach into your life effectively, you need to sit down and do the following steps. For one, identify and settle on key priority tasks. First, learn how to identify the key priority tasks and goals for work. Prioritize what is most important, and even with that, keep constraints as to how many priorities you really allow yourself to have. We often have a tendency to add priority 1, 2, and 3, but at the end of the day, just as the word says, you need to put what is priority, what is prior to the actual key thing. And then step 2 is to recognize inefficient habits that you'll most likely fall prey to. Whether that be responding to messages immediately or checking Twitter, it takes a lot of practice and be conscious and self-awareness to actually resist any of these subconscious actions. For a week or more, be alert at all the small little inefficient habits within your workday, whether it's jumping onto YouTube, Twitter, for just a few minutes during the work just to check the news or anything else. Even though it's just a few minutes, those few minutes add up, and they actually account for roughly 2.5 hours per day on average. That's almost 1/3 of an 8-hour workday. The third step is to overcome distractions and procrastination. Distractions are everywhere. We talk about this plenty of times in other videos. The problem with digital distractions is that it takes you off the flow of concentration. Studies show that it can take about 23 to 25 minutes for you to get back on track on something after being distracted. And distractions are not just bad for productivity, but they have been shown to cause higher levels of stress and reduction in mood as well. And then the last step is to set boundaries, be unavailable, and learn to say no. Besides setting limits on your social media usage, it can be common to not set limits with your colleagues or friends or family. If they message you, you respond. But if you get used to doing that out of a kind gesture, then that will never end. You need to learn to set hard boundaries and perhaps even make that transparent to your colleagues, your friends, your family, to prevent any additional distractions when they come in. Block out specific times in your calendar so it's visible for everyone you know, and tell them that you are focused on doing this one specific thing, and that you're not going to be available to respond immediately. This way, you won't overcommit yourself as well. So, at the end, in this always-on culture, it can be hard to shut down. From remote working becoming more prevalent and everything being connected online anyway, to shutting down can be super tough. Even if you think you're not working because you aren't directly doing the work, you can spend that leisure time doom scrolling or on a device, and that's still being connected. In fact, even if you aren't directly working, just being on the screen itself has some effects on your brain. As studies show, screen time can limit creativity. And we've talked about this in plenty of other videos as well. So in the end, it's important when you're unplugging from work to actually unplug. Establish an end of day, turning off the computer or so, shutdown ritual that is important to get your brain thinking, it's time for me to relax and rest. Your brain needs breaks. Despite what the hustle culture tends to say, you need to take some pause sometimes. Getting the right breaks can do more wonders for your productivity long term than just going hard non-stop. So if this sounds interesting to you, I will be making another video about taking a pause and learning how to take the pause the right way. So be on the lookout for that. Subscribe to this channel if you want me to continue feeding you nuggets of gold for boosting your brain and behavior.